We are so lucky. I get to be having a heart-to-heart conversation with Dr. Crawford. Welcome.
Lisa, thank you so much for having me here. I'm so honored to be on your podcast and I adore you so much ever since
Aw.
we have connected. This has been on my to-do list and I'm so glad we're making it happen.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for saying yes. I mean, I just respect you so much. You are everywhere. As we were just chatting before, jumping on recording. I just think you inspire me. You are all about educating, informing everybody out there in the fertility world. You're based in Austin, Texas, the co-founder of Fora Fertility. You are the podcast host of As a Woman, which I think it's hit over 5 million downloads, if I'm not
Wild.
mistaken. And adding author to your list of accolades, well, you are. It's coming. Your book is coming.
It's wild. I mean,
The
it's
fertility
that's been years in the making. Yeah, the fertility
Yeah, the
formula.
fertility formula. I'm just so grateful for you saying yes to coming on this conversation, this podcast. And how are you? There's so much happening. I mean, with the book launch, just share a little bit of what's on your heart these days.
You are so sweet to ask that. And it's a really busy time. I feel like I'm in a season of yes, we were saying that beforehand, but
Mhm.
seeing the response to the book already has been so impactful to me. You pour, I've been on social media for a decade. So
Yeah.
I mean, I've been a practicing fertility doctor for that long. I've been
Yeah.
talking about your fertility and trying to help women. I mean, really this big lofty mission of changing the trajectory of what their journey will be like by helping them learn about their body and be better advocates. And I've been
Yeah.
trying to get this book into the world for so long and heard so many no's that being on the side of the years of work writing and editing and we have the book in its final form and it's for sale and that people on the other end are willing to pre-order it all these months in
Yeah.
advance and show
Yeah.
support and to see the book charting so well so early. It really is, it's so validating, but so meaningful and really fills my heart up. So I just huge thanks to everybody who is
Mhm.
supporting it because that's what drives me to say, why am I spending my time talking about all of this? It truly
Yeah.
reminds me of when I was in the stages, when I was going through infertility myself and all the questions I had and how hard it was to find answers and find answers I could trust. And
Yeah.
really that's the catalyst for where we sit today. But I'm doing great.
Yeah.
Seeing that on the other end, what's really crazy about being somebody who's been online so long is there's a pre-order bonus tied with the book. And when people fill it out, it's on my website. I get a little email. Oh, so and so bought the book and filled
Oh
out the
my
pre-order
gosh.
bonus. And it's so fun to see people all over the world leaning in together to support this. So, anyways, I'm doing
Yeah.
well. And thank you. And thank you for having me and for
Yeah.
all of your support.
Oh, of course. I pre-ordered and I encourage everyone to get this book. And I think, yeah, it takes someone courageous to really step into crafting a book, putting it in the world. And you've taken all of your years of knowledge, which I know you didn't always start in reproductive endocrinology. You started in the ER world. And I
Yeah.
think we're in that world for a year before pivoting. And there's so many, I've read about your story a bit and learning about some of the changes and pivots and things that you've done in your life. I mean, take us back to kind of when did you always want to be a doctor? Just
I did always wanna be a doctor. That
Yeah,
one thing I declared when I
yeah,
was 7 and said I wanted to be a
yeah,
physician,
yeah.
and I knew I wanted to help people, and I was smart and nerdy, and had this laser focus of going to medical school, and when I was
Mm.
there, I truly loved all the different rotations. I had a really hard time
Mhm.
deciding what I wanted to do. I didn't have a good mentor. I got a lot of advice that if I wanna have kids one day, I should think of something with shift work, and
Yeah.
truly, I chose the ER because I did love the diagnostic puzzle, right? Somebody comes in
Mhm.
with a problem, this
Mhm.
array of symptoms, and you have to read between the lines and really get to the bottom of their story and order the right tests to get to the answer. And I loved that. But I
Mhm.
did quickly realize that I wasn't getting what I wanted from that relationship, from that part of the job. It felt very much like a job. And it
Mhm.
was very heartbreaking after working so hard. Here I am, finally a doctor after all of this training.
Mhm.
And I had so little satisfaction from it. Did I do the right thing? What happened to my patient? And I realized for the first time that when I was the one in charge of the patient, controlling their journey,
Yeah.
I wanted to have a bigger role. I wanted to know what happened.
Mhm.
I wanted to be a part of their story. And when
Yeah.
you're in medical training, you don't get to do that, so you don't really understand if that is important to
Mhm.
you. And everybody said I was crazy when I said I'm quitting. It's 3 months into my, first residency, and I stayed the full year because I did go. I think this the moral of the story is this is when honesty can really benefit you. And I went to my program director and just said, I'm not happy. And I've identified this as the problem. And there's no way that this is going to be the solution. Emergency medicine is not going to be the right fit for me.
Mhm.
And he became such a big supporter and advocate of me that stayed with me throughout my career, matching into fellowship and beyond, because he said, well, we'd love to keep you, but if this isn't right, good for you for identifying it. And ended up choosing
Yeah.
women's health because I felt like OBGYN was going to be able to follow somebody through that story. And I feel
Yeah.
like RAI specifically is the combination of that diagnostic challenge.
Mhm.
Here's the puzzle, what's really going on, plus talk about getting to know your patients and walking with them through their journey.
Yeah.
I'll say it's the best job and the worst job every single day,
Yeah.
but it filled that need for me in my cup to say, if I'm going to, at the time I didn't have any kids, but I said, if I'm going to leave my kids and go to this job and give so much to
Mm.
it, I want it to really be something that also is what I'm passionate about and fills my cup. And so that led me to REI, which was scary because it's very competitive. I had to do years of research in a lab, like studying pituitary cells. I'm very nerdy. I think people see me online and think I'm cool and extroverted sometimes, but I'm very nerdy and very introverted. But my own fertility journey overlapped the end of my OBGYN residency and the beginning of my REI fellowship. I had 4 pregnancy losses before I had my kids. And that really changed everything from there forward. How I approached every single patient,
Mm.
my own desire to know information and answers that I didn't have, even as a specialist, even as an OBGYN, I didn't know. Was my luteal phase long enough? Did I have enough progesterone? How many losses was too many losses? What evaluation should I be asking for? I didn't know those answers, and it
Mm.
really pivoted what I thought about my field. Even though I loved being a fertility doctor, I quickly learned we're very reactive. You
Mm.
have to fail before you come in to see us, before you even get an evaluation. And I understand why the field had been set up like that historically because of the whole population. Most people won't have infertility. So, does everybody need, quote unquote, this evaluation?
Mhm.
But I think that it really does a disservice to women, especially those who are trying to plan for their future, who might be waiting longer,
Mm.
and who want to try to control things in a very uncontrollable process. So that led me to getting a master's of science in clinical research. I told my fellowship program directors, I want answers to the questions I have. Like, love the lab, love IVF, but that's not my passion. And I do IVF every day and I do love it. I love
Mhm.
helping people get pregnant because there's so few of us who are truly experts in it and can understand both the puzzle of IVF. We're not just doing the procedure, but we're really trying to personalize it. But my
Mhm.
bigger passion is understanding your natural fertility and how the world impacts your body and your egg quality and
Yeah.
your sperm quality, and trying to educate people about that at an earlier stage in their journey. And that's the long-winded explanation to
Mm.
yes, I always wanted to be a doctor.
Yeah. You led me to so many points that I wanted to bring up. I want to come back to your story, your own fertility journey, because I feel like that really helps you relate to your patients even more because you've lived through loss. You really understand. And what you just shared about ER, that setting was not, how did you say? I heard you say it wasn't good for the soul. That career was not aligned.
There's many times in my journey now that I have said, you know, this is not right for me, and I'm not looking back. And that was the first time. That's probably the first time in my life where there was this big goal I had. I was somebody who didn't fail. I did everything right. I followed
Yep.
the story, and
Yep.
here I am. I matched my top program, and it was not right. And it
Yeah.
was nobody's fault but my own in that
Yeah.
circumstance, but decided against all the chatter and the noise of people telling me different things, don't switch to a longer residency, just get through with this one, do whatever you want. I
Hmm.
said, no, this isn't right for me. I have a sense that I don't know what to do, but I have a sense that this is not it. And my grandfather was a psychiatrist, so he was very supportive of me throughout any of this. And one thing that he said, which was really impactful, is that sometimes you can't figure out what to do next
Mhm.
when you're in the middle of the wrong.
Mm.
And that might sound a little hard to understand unless you've been in that position, but it's almost when you think about burnout or you think of some situation that you know is not right for you and you just know it's not right, we have this natural desire as humans to figure out what we have to do next before we leave the right thing or
Yeah.
the wrong thing. So, what am I going to do before I leave this? And we make all these excuses to stay here because we're trying to figure this out. But the idea that I can't figure that out until I leave this, there's
Yeah.
too much
Mm.
stress or emotional clutter.
Yeah.
You know, your soul is too burdened to be
Yeah.
able to look the other way. That mantra I really upheld many times in my life since then when it came to leaving
Mhm.
a job or
Mhm.
pivoting, because I
Yeah.
said, I can tell this isn't right for me and I don't have to have the next thing figured out. And in fact, I can't figure it out until I leave this scenario. And that goes against a lot of my Capricorn nature. Right? We really have to say, like, I can figure it out. I'm going to bet on me.
Yeah.
But it's been right all of these
Yeah.
times. I always say it's never wrong to listen to your gut in those instances,
Yeah.
but it can be tough.
Well, exactly what you're talking about, this idea of listening to your inner knowing. And I think for anyone listening who's going through a fertility journey, just to tap into that. That's one of the big things that I help women guide. I guide them through that to really listen to that inner voice, that where we can trust and listen and be guided. I mean, this is applicable to multiple areas of our life.
100%. And if I think about my own fertility journey, I was hearing things, everything, I had unexplained recurrent pregnancy loss, told everything's normal, just keep trying. There's nothing to do. And I kept feeling like that was not the case, that there's something more. I had this gut feeling that there was more to that story. And I know patients feel that when they go through infertility at many different times, whether it's maybe this isn't the right clinic or the right doctor for me, maybe this
Mhm.
isn't the right treatment plan, maybe we haven't done enough testing or I haven't asked the right questions. And agree with you wholeheartedly that that inner sense that something needs to change
Mhm.
is one of those strongest senses I think that we can have, and trying to learn how to lean into that, whether that means you need a second opinion, you need to leave clinics, you need to ask different
Mhm.
questions, you want to be, how we loosely say, that advocate for your own health, especially when it comes to your fertility. There's so little in healthcare that is so personal and so time sensitive as
Mhm.
this ability, desire, time moment to grow your family. And I tell my patients every day, you've got to trust that I got your back on the other side of the journey. And if for any reason you don't, because I may not be everybody's cup of tea, and that's
Yeah.
okay. People may need different things than our practice can give them. I encourage and I want you to go get other opinions and find some place that can be that. And maybe you come back here
Yeah.
and it is here and you feel more confident because you talk to other people, but maybe
Mhm.
you see somebody else who is better for you. And
Yeah.
so that's okay. I think sometimes we need permission for that. We give a lot of excuses
Mhm.
for why we need to stay here. It'll take too
Yeah.
long to get another opinion. I can't reestablish care with somebody else. They won't know me. But the idea of what you said, really listening to that inner voice, if it is guiding you in a different direction and not being afraid to take that step, even if the
Mhm.
unknown feels scary.
Yeah, and that's what much of fertility is. It's entering into this unknown. It's life, right? Every day we're in the unknown. You mentioned trusting the path and also trusting in your doctor. I feel like that's such a foundational piece of helping you go through this. Have trust in your team, right? And trust in your
It it is.
yeah.
I think this comes from a few different areas we can take this. One is to say, you deserve to know what you're doing and why you're doing it. And I think that's really a minimum standard of care. And something that I tell my patients all the time is, I can't control 100% of the things that go into the outcome. I wish I could. I would do everything I could. But we know with a genetically normal embryo, right, frozen embryo transfer rates are at best 65%. And there's a lot of different reasons for that. But that is telling us that sometimes things won't work even when you do everything right, but there's huge peace of mind to say, I know I'm doing everything I can. I know I trust the plan. I've feel comfortable. I can put trust in my doctor that they're making decisions that
Yeah.
are right for me. I trust that I'm controlling these external factors. And
Yeah.
that is an important piece of this journey, is knowing that you are controlling those variables that you can, because
Mhm.
the unknown is the scariest. Not knowing what you're doing, why you're doing it, what's going to happen next. That
Yeah.
is a pathway to induce stress. and really question every decision you make. And you're at the end of the story, whatever that looks like, you want to, at a minimum, say, we made the best decisions we could with the data we
Mm.
had. I trusted the process, and this
Yeah.
is where we are, whatever that end goal ends up looking like.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, so true. Um, as you shared a little bit about your fertility journey and having 3 losses, an ectopic pregnancy as well before having your 2 children, um, you understand a lot of heartbreak that can go into wanting to be a mom, and I just open up, if however much you would like to share about what you experienced and how long of a time period was that, and what really helped keep you going or staying in a mindset to, like, keep trusting that the path was gonna be revealed to you?
Such a hard question. So hard to roll back the clock so long. It was over
Yeah.
a period of 2 years,
Okay.
and had that very classic for a recurrent pregnancy loss girl to be like, I can get pregnant, but I can't stay pregnant,
Um,
which sometimes, well, I think all infertility does, but leads to a lot of dismissive comments by other people
mhm,
and makes you feel almost like you're crazy for asking questions or for walking down this road.
mm,
Going through it felt exceptionally heartbreaking because I was so unprepared for it despite being an OBGYN, despite knowing that miscarriages can happen. I really was so unprepared for what it would be like. I was so unprepared for what it would be like to be having a miscarriage at work and
mm.
going to deliver other people's babies,
Oh,
for losing pregnancies while being an infertility fellow and helping, doing
mm,
other women's OB scans while we were trending my betas down.
mm,
The emotional impact of a lot of that felt very disconnecting, that I was living two different lives at one time. And I
mm,
know a lot of people with infertility sometimes feel a lot that way. You're putting on this face to show up
mm.
in this aspect of your
Yep.
life, but your reality is so different from that. And it is
Mhm,
by no means a truth that to be a good fertility doctor, you have to have infertility or experience something like this. But for me, it changed everything about how I practice medicine,
yeah.
how I approach every patient, the words I say to them. To me, I saw a variety of different doctors during that time because it was located in different places. I was in Dallas for part of it, I was in North
Wow.
Carolina for part of
Mm,
it. And one thing that really stuck with me was one of my OBGYNs saying, you know, I believe this is going to happen for you, and it's your job to
mhm,
stay on the path and
mhm,
advocate for yourself along the way and
mhm,
fight for answers, but not to give up in it. And
mhm.
that was helpful. I know that is always met with mixed advice to people at some point, because maybe it sounds like at some point the path does end for some of us. But for me, replaying in my head, my doctor thinks this will happen to me when I was in very low moments, was a very important thing that I said to myself over and over. And it is something that I carry and I say to patients if they're in the middle of a loss, especially those who I do think it will happen for. I see so many patients and we start to stratify in our own head people we're really worried about, circumstances that we don't know we're going to be able to overcome, and then
Mm,
people who are in circumstances that we do think are gonna be overcomeable, they are just in a bad circumstance at the moment.
mhm,
And it makes me hug more. Hugs felt good to me from my doctors. I felt seen as a person and a human in those circumstances, and saying, "This is a terrible thing you're going through. You deserve to grieve about it or be upset about it, but I believe this is going to happen for you. There's no data that tells me you won't have this." How I
mm,
frame words has become very important, because being on the receiving end of words,
yeah.
every word matters. So instead of saying, "Oh yeah, you'll be pregnant one day," well, that didn't mean very much to me because I wanted to stay pregnant. But saying things that are true, right? There's
Yeah.
no test that I have in front of me that tells me that you're not gonna hold a baby in your arms one day. So, let's believe in that fact.
Yeah.
That's what the data shows us, and once we're through with this, we'll come up with a game plan.
Mm,
So, I think that it's important, if you're hearing this just in general, right, no matter where you are, who you are, that words do matter. They're very powerful. Of course, our own experiences shape who we are.
yeah.
My story becomes more complicated because I fought for testing and other things that at the time just was told everything was normal, keep trying or do IVF. We were gearing up for IVF, but not at a place to do it because of my work schedule.
Mm,
And at the same time overlapped with me starting to dive into a lot of this clinical research and seeing a lot of chatter about inflammation and insulin resistance in all of these studies that looked at endocrine disrupting chemicals and vitamin D and ovarian
mm,
reserve and short luteal phase. But yet we didn't talk about those things in fertility unless it's on a disease pathway, meaning we talk about insulin resistance and PCOS or
mm,
inflammation and endometriosis. But all of the unexplained or the recurrent pregnancy loss, we didn't talk about these terms, but here they were in natural fertility studies. And it led me to really say, hey, if we're going to do IVF, we're bringing the best eggs and sperm to the table. If we don't know what's going on, I refuse the idea that nothing's wrong. To me, something's wrong. It's just must be harder to diagnose. And
yeah.
we really changed a bunch of our lifestyle, what we ate, the things in our kitchen, how we approached life. I took the mentality of I'm going to do these things because if I can decrease inflammation, it's going to be better for me long term, regardless of if I can get pregnant again and stay pregnant. More of a, I'm going to do this for me, but I believe my egg quality will benefit from it. And a decade after, got pregnant without IVF. So in this waiting time period, ended up getting pregnant without needing IVF and staying pregnant. And a decade later, got diagnosed with celiac disease, which
Mm,
is interesting because when we started to eat healthier and clean up these things, really one thing that I did was say, well, what symptoms are inflammatory and what things cause those? And in me realizing that when I had gluten, I would feel more
mm,
inflamed
mm.
and didn't have GI symptoms. I did not think I had celiac disease, like just stating that out loud, but just saying, oh, I felt kind of icky or tired or had a headache, just these very
Yeah.
vague constellation of the inflammation symptoms that led me to cut it out both of the times that I ended up getting pregnant and staying pregnant. And so I truly didn't have nothing wrong. I actually did have something quite wrong that
Mm,
was contributing to the pregnancy loss. And I think it just speaks to the power of my gut was right. But also, even if you can't have the exact answer, there's power in learning to listen to your body and
yeah.
controlling these external variables so that you can have that peace of mind of doing everything that you can and knowing that you are having the best egg and sperm quality, regardless of if you're trying naturally or you have infertility or you're doing IVF. It's
Mhm.
important at all those different stages.
Thank you for expanding on that. I mean, you really did listen to your body and know yourself. And speaking to that natural side of fertility, I know you tell people like, I don't want to have to help you. Right. We don't want to have to go down the path of fertility treatments. We want to optimize fertility, reduce all the hormone disruptors, like just help enhance uh, overall health, right? I mean, can you speak a little bit about your passion for this? Because I know it's a big part of your book. That's
Yeah.
one of the key. I think you have three key things, right? We can chat about, but one of
Yes.
them is natural fertility.
Look at that.
So,
I love you. I think it's important anytime in this conversation to say there are people that no matter how we optimize natural fertility will need IVF. There are circumstances where there's tubal disease or severe male factor, certain birth defects or genetic factors that IVF will be the way that they need to conceive.
yeah.
That doesn't negate the fact that optimizing your natural fertility is still
Hmm.
important. And we could
Yep.
argue it's even more important in that circumstance because that's the way you need to get pregnant. Yet as somebody who owns an IVF lab, right, we can only work with the eggs and sperm you give us. So their
Yeah.
quality becomes even more essential over here. But yeah, in
Yeah.
my perfect world, there are a ton of people who do end up needing IVF largely because of time, age, other factors
Yeah,
too.
we need a male factor.
Yeah. And so there's people who
Yeah.
need IVF, but who potentially could have gotten away without needing it
Mm,
had they been able to have a different journey earlier. And a lot of it's failure of us as
mm,
medical professionals
mhm,
because the current world prevent pregnancy, we
mhm.
completely ignore it. We're on birth control or whatever we do until one magic day where suddenly we turn around and we're like, let's get pregnant. And there's no real preparation for the majority of people. There's no talking about what you should do or what warning signs are. And then again, to what we said earlier, we don't even see people until they're already failure and a
Yeah.
deficit.
Quote. Yeah. Yeah.
Right, and so I think
Mhm.
that the system is set up to be tough, and especially if you're starting
Mm,
that entire journey at an earlier age, you might end up doing IVF because it does truly make sense for you, but had the earlier journey been different, maybe it wouldn't have looked that way, right? Could we
yeah.
really change someone's trajectory? And yeah, I commonly would say, in my perfect world, I'd have less people do IVF. They would get pregnant naturally. That would be
Yeah.
my dream, my goal. It's not
Mhm.
it's not a reality for everybody, so that's an important caveat, but it is an important factor regardless of if you need IVF or not. And this
Mm.
idea that for too long, we've thought of our body as these different organ systems and not that everything is connected, but of course, everything is connected.
Yes.
And if we really think about how things work, you have, let's think just very simple hormonally at a cellular level, because I believe women are smart enough to understand their bodies. Your brain is interpreting hormone signals back. It's interpreting those from your ovaries, like estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, but it's also interpreting other hormones like insulin from your gut. It's interpreting cortisol from your adrenal glands. And it's making decisions based on the sum of all of these hormones about what is happening, and then allowing the pituitary gland to send out other hormones that do control things like ovulation, progesterone
Mm.
production, etc. So when
Mhm.
your brain is getting these external signals that things are not good, whether it's from chronic stress, high cortisol, from inflammation, from insulin resistance, these are signs to your brain like, maybe we can't support a pregnancy right now. And maybe I shouldn't send off all of the other hormones, because what if there's a bear we need to run from? Or
Yeah.
what if there's some other challenge? What if we're getting insulin resistance for a different reason? And so when we think about these two words, Lisa, I love breaking them down. And this is really the first part of the book is talking about inflammation, which that should just show you in a fertility book. Chapter 1 is about how inflammation hijacks your fertility,
Mm.
because we know fertility rates are rising, the world around us is becoming more inflammatory, and these things are not a coincidence. What is
Mm.
happening is that the world around us, the things we are exposed to, is becoming more toxic, and we're accepting of that as a society, but it's impacting our health on multiple layers, especially
Mm.
your hormonal health. So, a couple cell biology things, because I think when we talk about lifestyle recommendations, people are very fast to say, that's not really that important,
Mm.
or these things don't matter because I
Oh,
know so and so who did none of this stuff and they got pregnant, so it doesn't matter. Of course, we'll always have outliers, but especially if you're somebody who wants to say, I want to have the highest chance of getting pregnant, I want to get pregnant faster, or I want to have a higher odds of success,
mm.
controlling these variables is really important. But if we tell people why, it's going to make a lot more sense.
Yeah.
So, let's think of ourselves real fast. So, a quick
Yeah.
lesson, right? When it comes to your gut, I think a lot of stuff starts in our gut and we don't talk about it enough. But inside your intestines, you've got one lining of cells, and that intestinal layer is the barrier between the things that you eat and are exposed to and your bloodstream. And when this layer is damaged, or it's constantly exposed to toxic things, we'll say like ultra processed foods or
Mm.
inflammatory substances, suddenly you're going to get what's called a leaky gut, or the medical term is an increased permeability. So these
Mm.
cells have gaps in them
Mhm.
that allow things to pass through, and
Mm.
automatically goes right into your bloodstream, elevating inflammation and contributing to insulin resistance, which we're going to go over. Your gut has its own microbiome, and there's not enough evidence, or there's evidence. There's not enough people talking about your gut microbiome and how important it is for hormonal health. But the microbiome of your gut are really important in estrogen metabolism and controlling the level of insulin resistance that you have. But your gut microbiome is fed by fiber, and a lot of us lead a very fiber low
Mm.
diet. Your
Mhm.
fruits and vegetables are the food for the gut microbiome. So if you are not eating a diet high in fruits and vegetables, if you have a really ultra processed foods, artificial sugars, even, animal products don't have fiber in them. That doesn't mean they're inherently bad, but
Mhm.
they are not fuel for that gut microbiome, which is that
Mm.
first line of defense against a lot of these things that we encounter.
Mhm.
Then you're setting yourself up in a deficit.
Mm.
When you start getting this inflammation and you start getting this buildup of some of these toxins, especially sugar, a lot of people think, oh, sugar, I don't need a lot of sugar, so it's totally fine. But we have to remember that all foods get broken down into sugar. Glucose is the
Yeah.
fuel for your cells. And insulin, even though it's often talked about, a lot of my patients will say, diabetes doesn't run in my family, so I don't need to think about insulin. It's not an important factor for me. Insulin as a hormone controls sugar or glucose being used into your cells. So let's think of it as the gatekeeper, allowing glucose to go in, and then your cell has the fuel that it needs to do all of its cellular functions. Well, when your body is constantly inflamed and seeing high glucose levels, what starts to happen is that your cells say, well, we have enough of this, we don't need more. And yet insulin is being sent out, and your cells start to become what we know as insulin resistant. They say, I already have enough, I don't need more. Well, what happens over time then is that even if you are eating better at first, it's
Mhm.
going to take a higher level of insulin to open the gate. It's going to take a stronger signal. And you really get into this metabolically poor pathway that can be really hard to break from. You get high levels of insulin in your blood because it's taking more, but insulin's a growth hormone, meaning it's going to cause you to gain weight, store a lot of that sugar as fat. They want it accessible for you. And then fat cells make estrogen and are inflammatory, and they kind of change this pathway in a negative way. Long story short, this is why, one, trying to decrease the sugar burden in your blood is important as well, but also actively doing things to fight this insulin resistance. Because I say a lot of the today's world is just naturally insulin resistant. So what does
Mm,
that mean? That means, getting enough sleep at night when you're not actively, well, one, eating, but this is when insulin levels naturally start to drop. Your cells are starting to use that glucose for other processes. We need to get at least 7 to 9 hours of sleep, and we need a nice circadian rhythm because your hormones
mhm.
like regularity and balance. But more than a third of adults get less than 6 hours of sleep. So that
Mm,
statistic is really scary. And I've been that person at different times of my life.
yeah.
Not in the past 3 years or so. Since I've gotten older, I've realized more how important sleep is. But
Mm,
I think we live in a culture that's okay with sleep deficit,
mm,
especially if you're a high achiever. But then you're setting your day up already insulin resistant, already inflamed from the get-go, and your
mm,
hormones are going to pay the cost of that. The other big thing that we can do, in addition to dietary changes that are going to feed this gut microbiome and really start to reverse it from what
mm,
you're putting in your body, is building skeletal muscle. Skeletal muscle has this unique property where it's able to use glucose without needing insulin. So it bypasses the insulin mechanism. So if you want to make your cells more sensitive, suddenly we want to bypass this mechanism, drop those glucose in our bloodstream, and allow the cells to respond easier. And that's why it's so important to build muscle, use muscle. But we don't talk about that enough, especially when it
mm,
comes to exercise and fertility. What do people say? They just talk about what you can and what you can't do when it
mm,
comes to fertility treatments. Nobody's saying pick up weights, build muscle. That's going to improve your hormonal health and your brain's responsiveness to other hormones because it's going to drop your inflammation levels. But that's actually
mm.
true and what we see. So,
Yeah.
movement and the type of movement you do is actually quite important when it comes to hormonal health. And I think it's also, we're saying that stress, cortisol itself is an inflammation hormone, and our bodies are meant to have stress because there's a bear or there's some crazy
Yeah.
stressor. And when that happens, it doesn't want your cells to use glucose in the normal way. It wants to keep it. So you become naturally more insulin resistant so that that sugar can be available for your heart and your lungs and to run from the bear and everything that it needs. But if you don't ever run from the bear and then go use that sugar up, you're at your desk and your stress is from an email that you got or that bad meeting or other things that happen, you're going to just actually add to that insulin resistance. So think about that. Being
Mhm.
stressed causes you to be insulin resistant. That has nothing to do with the foods that you're eating, but directly contributes to inflammation. And then
Mm,
inflammation, again, this is coming at your brain, and your brain says, what is going on? Is there a bear? We are
mm.
stressed. Maybe we shouldn't get pregnant right now. And of course, I'm rambling and oversimplifying it.
No, it's so
But,
good.
but I
Yeah.
think this just goes to say at a cellular level, these different things that we encounter every single day and we make active decisions on do play a large role on the state of our body and therefore our hormonal health and our ability to get pregnant, stay pregnant. And so if you say, I want to optimize my fertility and do everything I can to have good egg quality, that means we want to take an active role in making good choices for us. So I want to choose to get enough sleep, and I want to choose to try to decrease my stress by carving out 20 minutes a day to do something that will help lower it. And I want to pick up some weights and move my body, and I want to pay attention to the foods that I'm eating. So there's no one perfect thing that's going
Yeah.
to cure infertility, just like there's no one thing that's going to cause it. But the idea that your lifestyle doesn't matter really is a false narrative, because all of these little decisions, they do
Mm.
add up. And the
Compound.
sum of these decisions sets the stage for how your body is going to function. And this is important, truly throughout your entire life, but
Yeah.
especially when it comes to your reproductive years, because that is a finite moment of time.
Mm. Oh my gosh. I'm just soaking all this up. There's a lot of information. It's so empowering. It's empowering. I think for anyone listening, you mentioned taking an active role in your health, and that's so wonderful to be reminded of like things that we can control. A lot of people, I think, take the approach of there's nothing I can do, right? We're just,
Well,
yeah.
that's the hardest part, we'll say, for infertility for me,
Hmm.
is this complete loss of control as a very controlling person.
Mm,
And the idea that even when I was crafting my own plan to say, these are things I'm going to control, that felt good because it said, okay, I'm doing these things. I know they're only going to be net positive. And now I feel like I'm controlling this journey more versus just spiraling in this out of control process. So when you can't control it all, control what you can. Some of that is your knowledge, right? You should know these different things. A lot of that is knowing facts about your body and getting testing, as we said earlier, knowing what you're doing and why you're doing it and feeling confident in the game plan and
mm,
controlling these external variables that do, in fact, impact your body and your fertility. That's a lot different than just saying, oh, it's just going to be luck if this happens for me or not. We're actively
yeah.
changing our luck because we are going to make active decisions and control much more of this process than we've been told to in the past.
Hmm. You mentioned optimizing our lifestyle and also mental health. Isn't that a part of your book too? Talking a lot about mental health.
Yeah, and just talking about our mindset throughout the journey
Mhm.
and how we control ourselves. There's so much data that both infertility is stressful and therefore associated, with higher rates of anxiety and depression, but also that mental health contributes to that as well. And so thinking about it's not one or the other, but a lot of this is really a circular journey.
Yeah.
And even when I think about myself, there's small things that we do that impact our mental health every single day, especially when we're on infertility. And I didn't share my fertility journey with anybody. My husband and I went through it alone. I definitely was of that mindset. I'll tell my friends once I'm 12, 14 weeks along, once I know everything's okay. And that set me to a place where when I lost a pregnancy, had I called my best friend and tell her I lost it when I didn't even tell her I was pregnant, it made me feel like
Mhm.
I was more alone and made the process inherently more stressful because we do know that community is one of the major ways that we can decrease stress by lessening the burden. And I tell my patients now, especially when they're going through hard times,
Mhm.
you don't need to feel like you have to share this with everybody. And props to people who are sharing their whole fertility journey in real time with the internet because that's a vulnerable place that I think is incredible.
Yeah.
But for you as an individual, that's a personal decision if you want to do that or not. But what I encourage people to do is the opposite of what I did, which is at least tell the people in your life who
Yeah.
will show up and support you and let them into what's going on. And you will be shocked more often than not at how they do show
Mm.
up. I
Mm.
have patients now who's, their partner is busy and their best friend will come to their appointment or they'll ask the questions for them or help bring them something if they are going through a pregnancy loss. And just that presence of showing up, even if it's not something perfect to say or to do. It's just knowing that you are not alone because feeling left behind from your friend group and your
Oh.
peers when you say
Mm.
they're having kids, they're getting to this next chapter. I so desperately want to be there, yet we're not. You
Mhm.
start to feel the divide get even bigger. And
Mm.
so there are some things that, again, that's not just, oh, they support me or they don't. You have to actively say, I'm going to make this choice to tell them this kind of hard thing and
Yeah.
trust that they're gonna show up for me the way that I expect them to because we are close in that way.
Mm.
It's so hard, right? Going through
Mm.
it, there's
Yeah.
there's nothing like the experience of infertility to make you question who you are,
Mm.
what your life is going to look like, and that I think is adds to the difficulty of this
Mm.
entire journey. You start questioning your own self along the
Yeah.
way.
Very much. I mean, thank you. You can just tell what a compassionate doctor you are. And having lived through this journey, and you're speaking so vulnerably about, what you went through and what you see with clients. And you're right. We don't want to lose ourselves through this process. That's the essence of my book, Hold On Baby. It's like, hold on to you, don't lose you through this path. Um, eh,
It's hard though, and it's easy to get lost along it, especially if we roll back earlier, especially if you don't know what's happening. And I think that's the easiest way to lose who you are along the way because
mhm,
you are diving into this completely unknown world. And so really
mhm,
thinking about how should my body work? What's going wrong? When should I get testing? What should I be asking for? That is one
mhm.
thing. In addition to these other aspects, in the fertility formula, we're talking about all this lifestyle stuff is half the book, but also
Yeah.
talking about the whole inflammation and how your hormones work and egg quality and how it's more than just your age, but also when things are going wrong, what should you do and how do you track your cycles? But what if they're abnormal and what tests should we be asking for and what should be happening next and what could be going on? Because that allows you to be a better advocate when you know what
Mhm.
questions to ask. You
Yeah.
say, okay, I know this is abnormal and I need to go get it evaluated, but here's how what I'm going to ask for or how I'm going to frame this discussion, how to
Mhm.
talk to your doctor, these different circumstances, because those are things I find that even when I was on the other side of as a patient, you just get overwhelmed and you want somebody to take care
Mhm.
of you and to tell you what to happen.
Yeah.
You don't want to have to be an advocate for yourself, but the reality is you have to be. And that's how medicine is right now.
Yeah. Speaking about like the joy and doing those things that you love to do, I always believe wholeheartedly on your path to motherhood. Like keep living life, keep living fully, doing the things that light you up. And I know writing your book, like, was that something like what's lighting you up? I guess I want to ask you like these days. Was writing an enjoyable process or have you been
That
struggling?
that's a great question. I loved writing the book. I'm
Mhm.
kind of sad that we're past I mean, we're past writing, we're past edits.
You'll
I
have
mean,
another
we're
book.
literally
You'll
on
have another
page
book down the
proofs.
road.
When I was like, what can I write next? But I loved writing. It was harder than I thought in a way. Of course, writing a book is hard, but I have been using the spoken word to communicate fertility education to
Mhm.
patients for so long
Yeah.
that I anticipated I have hours and hours on every topic. It's not going to be that tough for me to then put it into written form. But when you think about a book, and you know this, these words and the way that you frame them, and we already established that words are powerful,
Yeah.
it's gonna live this way in perpetuity. This is the book, and how
Yeah.
it is phrased is how it is going to live, and knowing when to be firm and when to acknowledge that this is the current recommendation, but it might be different in the future, but really
Mm.
trying to give patients and women and people true advice because I didn't want it to be a wishy-washy book. I wanna be like, this is how I practice, this is what I believe, this is what I think is best for you, what you should ask for, what you should do, because I really wanted it to be prescriptive. That there's a lot of pressure that went along that way, that it was both very spark dry like, really lit a spark
Mhm.
under me, but I'm
Mhm.
a perfectionistic OCD person, Lisa, so I'm, like, looking up every study that exists on every single topic and really wanting to be comprehensive, and then would go to my editor and she'd say, "Let's cut out 10,000 words." I'm
I
like,
know, I read that. I'm like, "What?" I heard you talking about that. Like, "Oh, like 10,000." Like, how do you do that, right? It's really getting so dialed in and focused. It's
It is,
Yeah.
and I think that's why I loved you were talking about some of the things that you're doing, where you
Yeah.
have to talk so quickly on a short topic you're very passionate about, and there
Yeah.
is an art to saying, "This is important, and let me convey this idea effectively and efficiently," but
Mhm.
also, this is where I think people need the background so that they can understand it, and that balance of giving enough background info, enough nitty-gritty science to say, "This is what's happening," versus this is the recommendation and moving on. That was probably the hardest part. This book was
Mhm.
finished writing December of 2024. And
Yeah.
then, we went through edits from, there to April.
Yeah.
And going through the deep edits of really cutting back the book was significantly challenging because it felt like a child. I loved it all.
Mhm.
And I will say at the end of the day, when I sent in the very final last time version, I said, I love it all, you can't cut any more of it out. Okay, thank you, goodbye. And, I mean, I cut it down significantly from where it was, but at the end of the day, there was a moment of, I just can't cut anymore. Like,
Yeah.
this is the info that
Yeah.
people need, and we're gonna let it be. But I found writing really, really lovely. I found it hard to balance, right? Still with practicing and everything
Yeah.
else that was going on, that I I write best in the morning, but I
Mm.
work early in the morning too. So trying to get up early or trying to shift
Yeah.
my schedule some to really carve out the chunks of time, as an author.
Mhm.
I don't like writing in just a little an hour here, an hour there. I need four
Yeah.
to 6 hours to just
Yeah.
dive into a section and really work through it. And it
Mhm.
was hard with my kids. They'd be like, "Oh, you're writing the book." I swear
How
the
old are your
book that
kids now? How old are they?
9 and 11, so 4th grade and 6th grade,
Oh,
and both old enough to understand and be really proud of the book and really proud of me, but also to be like, "Mom, where are you? Can
oh,
we not write the
yeah.
book today?" but just saying it's a
Mm.
moment in time, and that's what it takes, and props to my husband for being so amazing during those moments
Yeah.
as well, but really learning balance has been tough. I've always
Mhm.
said I'm a doctor first and foremost and want to show up for my patients, and clinically making sure that that didn't suffer during any of these moments has been exceedingly important. But seeing the response to the book, planning events, we're working on planning events for the book. So that's so
Ooh,
exciting. Thinking about
exciting.
interacting with people and
Mm.
really taking it to that next stage, because to me, this isn't just, the book launch is just but one moment. I'm hopeful that this is
Mhm.
going to be a book that people are going to reach to for a really long time,
Yeah.
whether they're just wanting to learn about their body before they try to get pregnant, they're trying, or they have infertility, that is going to be helpful at all of those moments. And so I'm really excited about it.
I can't wait to read it, and I've shared it with so many people that they should pre-order it. And yeah, just getting to meet you in person at ASRM last year in Denver. It's like getting to, connect on a human face-to-face level. We see people online, right? We have one idea of how they are, but just getting to hang out with you in person, and like that was just such a great, fun
That was
experience.
my favorite night of ASRM.
Oh,
Amanda Skiller and I talk about that all the time, how much fun we
oh,
had. Because it's true. We do get to see people online, and we do form an idea of who they are, which is great.
yeah,
Some of my closest friends now I have connected with through the internet, which is
yeah,
wild.
yeah,
But when you really get to sit down and talk to people and have those moments and conversations, that's really what fuels any of us who spend any
yeah.
time online. It's all about the personal connection.
Mhm.
And so, yes,
Yeah.
with the book, that's what I'm most excited about now, is planning all these events that we're gonna be doing, and really getting to see people who have been supportive on the other side of it. And so, to see
That's
everybody,
so
we'll have to come to
exciting.
Denver, right? See you
Yeah.
again, friend.
Come back. Yeah, it's so exciting. I want you to share any links for people. I'll keep things in the show notes too. I'll share, but like, how can people find you?
Thank you. Yes. So I'm all over the internet at Natalie Crawford MD. There's the As a Woman podcast, and the Fertility Formula is for pre-sale now. And if you do pre-order it, there is a 30-page fertility lifestyle guide that you can get that has a lot of really helpful information right away. If a lot of this
Mm,
information about inflammation or insulin resistance felt a little scary, can help start diving into what you can do. And then there's also access to the IVF course, because I know people who are in the midst of IVF right now. Waiting till
mhm,
April for a book to come out feels very not fun. I agree. I have really pushed for this book to come out earlier, but April it is.
April.
And April it is. So you can get access to the IVF course right away, which is going to make you feel like you know much more about what's happening in IVF, talking about protocols and nitty gritty and implantation failure. So I really encourage people, if they're considering it, to just pre order it now. You'll still get the book when it comes out, but you'll get all these bonuses. And that's at nataliecrawfordmd.com/book, where you can order it and you can put in your information and get the pre-order bonus right away.
So good. Oh my gosh, I could talk to you forever.
Lisa, I love you. Thank you so much for
Oh,
having
it's
me.
so great. Thank you for everything. And I will be sharing this episode. And thank you for just being such an amplifier, like in this world, elevating others and speaking with so much heart. Love you.
Oh, you're so sweet. I love you so much. I'm
Oh,
so sad you're not coming to ASRM, because I
no.
was looking forward to hugging you and seeing you again.
Oh,
But for real, when this comes out, we're
yes.
happy to, collaborate with it and share it. Just keep us
Yeah,
in the loop about when that's happening.
I will do that. All right. Thanks for listening,
Okay.
everybody. Bye.